right. So our group online support session. My name is Paisley Madison and I'm the coordinator at Healthy Mind Menu. And Healthy Mind Menu is a charity based here in Perth, supporting Western Australian hospitality workers, specifically looking at how we can improve our mental well-being. And so our online group support sessions are held every single month and they are recorded, and it's centered around different topics that are relevant for the industry, and also giving practical tips and tools that we can take away to work on. And so this session is part of a 5-part series, which is looking at the Healthy Mind Pyramid. And the Healthy Mind Pyramid looks at 5 key ingredients that we need in order to maintain mental well-being. And so if you imagine a pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation of a healthy mind is sleep. And we know that we need 7 to 9 hours sleep. If you don't get sleep, you feel it straight away. Sleep deprivation is literally torture. From the bottom moving up, we have nutrition, and that forms a huge part of our mood, how we feel, and the sort of energy levels that we have in life. From there, we're looking at connectedness, connecting to ourselves, connecting to community, each other, and having that sense of belonging. The next level up is looking at movement, physical movement, activity, keeping ourselves alive and moving in our bodies. And then the top layer is downtime. So looking at how do we actually unwind and give ourselves a mental break, basically, so we can relax. So the session today that we're up to is nutrition. And today we are joined with our guest, who is Kerryn Grace, who is going to take us through a few strategies on nutrition for the hospitality industry. So specifically looking at, okay, how do we do this and what does it actually mean for us? I mean, for the most part, we all know that we need to eat well. And for the most part, we know what foods look healthy. I mean, it's been drilled into us in, the media. We can Google it. And yet for some of us, it's such a huge challenge. And, we're trying our best, but it doesn't seem to work, or we're not fully understanding how to make this work for us, a personalized approach. So we're going to jump in and a bit of a Q&A style, and then we'll go through a few more strategies. So Kerryn, I'll pass you over to Kerryn in a moment. Kerryn is a holistic nutritionist with a background in psychology. So take it away, Kerryn, if you give us a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Like Paisley said, I'm a holistic nutritionist. I studied nutrition about 10 years ago, I think is when I started. And what I realized in practice is that it's really great to tell people what to eat all the time, but not many people take action on that. There's so many, especially now, there's so many resources that we have to tell us what to eat. But not a lot of us can achieve it. And I got really interested in what stops people from actually taking the action that they want to take or getting the results that they want. And which is why I went back to study the psychology of eating and kind of dove deep into why we eat and why we do the things that we do, and how we can actually influence change from that perspective. And it's so much more meaningful than just telling people what to eat and when.
Yeah, exactly. And we're really lucky to have Kerryn with us, because Kerryn actually has a background in hospitality. So, you have your own personal experiences, you understand the industry, what that looks like. From 17, you've been in the industry from, all the way through to, to nightclubs as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So give us a little bit of an overview on when you got started in hospitality and what that was like for you and what you sort of noticed.
Yeah, even actually, as you said that, I was thinking it's probably earlier than that, because I grew up in Margaret River and the only jobs you could get as a teenager were in hospitality, particularly then in the 90s. So I think my first job, I would have been 13, washing dishes in a cafe. And then from there, you get lots of kind of dishwashing jobs, waitressing jobs, bar work. And then, like you said, graduated to work in nightclubs as I got a bit older and moved to the city. So, yeah, I do definitely have that experience. all across the different levels of hospitality. I was really interested in tourism when I was younger too. I studied a little bit at TAFE around that. It was just kind of one of the only options to study that would be relevant in Margaret River at the time. And I think it's definitely a unique challenge. When I have hospitality workers come to me in my clinic, there's a lot of different variables to work with that are different to any other kind of work environment, particularly when it comes to like eating and self-care, as I'm sure you guys know.
Yeah, I mean, you think about hospitality and we're talking about nutrition, and it's like, well, I have access to food and I've got access to so much food, depending on obviously where we work. So when we're talking about like nutrition in hospitality, what do you see? And even from your own personal experience and also working with clients in your own clinic practice, what do you see are some of the challenges, or I guess some of the issues that are coming up for people?
I would say there's a lot of food around you, but there's not a lot of spare time, right? So it's a lot of like eating, what's available in a hurry, and eating on the run, and eating without a lot of consideration for how that food makes you feel, or how that food is fueling your body. I think, just like any of the things you mentioned on the pyramid, it's like, oh, I'll just wait until I'm exhausted before I consider that. And that's kind of just the innate culture of that industry. It's like we just do everything in between work, it's kind of all consuming, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess from when we're thinking about the effects of that on the body, if we're not eating well, what are some of the symptoms or signs? Like, how will we notice if things are kind of out of whack? Like, I tend to think, when I think about my time in hospitality, I was working for a cafe / pub. They were joined, and I think within a couple of years, like I noticed for myself, I just stacked weight on so fast. And for someone who was always on their feet, I just thought, why? I'm busy anyway, and not really understanding or eating right for me. So that was, I guess, one symptom or something that I could notice. But what else might present if we're not eating well?
Well, the truth is that if you're eating in a rush, or if you're eating without being relaxed, you're not going to digest your food as well. So there's a couple of things that could have been happening for you in that situation, in that, like, one, if you're not digesting your food very well, then your body holds on to all the nutrition it can. And the only way to do that is in fat tissue. So it's like, while you're eating, if you're going to be in a rush, if you're going to be under stress all the time, then the body's like, I'm going to take care of you by just storing some of this away over here and over here. So quite often I see people, not just hospitality workers, who have stacked on weight, who eat and exercise all the time, and that can be one of the reasons, is stress. The other thing is obviously, the richness of foods in the hospitality environment. It's not the same as food we cook at home. And, chefs would know this. There's a lot of extra kind of butter and salt and all of those yummy things that are fine to eat occasionally. But if you're eating them all the time, it is going to have an impact on your body as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, like, as a measure, like how much rich food is okay? Like, what's the limit? Because obviously, like, as humans, we love the path of least resistance, and like, if it's there, like, we want to indulge. So how do we know when enough is enough?
I think that's variable based on your own unique experience, right? Like, I mean, there's probably some measure out there that you can download from the internet. But
who's got time for that? Who's got time to like count calories, like when you've got to shift food?
Exactly. The best measure is really using your own body's feedback, checking in, actually, is this food serving me? Do I feel good after I eat? Like, if you really dial back the purpose of eating, it's to energize you, it's to make you feel good, it's to, help you achieve the things that you want to achieve. And if what you're eating isn't working for whatever reason, whether it's, actually, I don't want to weigh this extra 10 kilos or whatever it is, or I actually don't want to be so tired at the end of the day, or I don't want to have this bad skin, or whatever is going on, that the potential to change those effects is great when it comes to what you eat. Sometimes we just lose sight of that. And I think in that environment, like I said before, we're so distracted by so many things that it is more difficult to tune into your body's feedback. But you could always do it at a time where you're not at work, okay, reflecting on that day, what times did I eat? How much did I eat? Was that an adequate amount of fuel? Was there green vegetables, red vegetables? Did I eat any fruit in the last week? Winding it back to that kind of really basic, what does my body need? Protein, carbohydrates, fat, colors, all of those kind of things. It's really all the detail that you need to know. It is to, just ensure that what you're eating is making you feel good, and you're eating a wide variety of food, and the best quality food that you can find.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm hearing is that, in order to figure out if the food that we're eating is right for us, number one, getting an overall check, okay, what kind of food am I eating? Am I eating lots of rich foods, or have I balanced that out with something a little bit more simple? And then being able to slow down to actually register what our body is feeling. And like you said, if we're in that environment where we're really busy and on the go, or those moments where we eat and we don't even know what we just ate because it's just get it down, then we're not actually going to recognize what our body needs. Are there any physical symptoms that we might feel, other symptoms, if we're not eating right? Without studying nutrition, I just make an assumption that I probably should have something carbohydrate, maybe protein. Sometimes I fast and that feels nice, but if I've got a long shift, or I'm someone who's on my feet often, or I know I'm about to pull a big day, 12 hours or whatever it might be, or a back-to-back, do you have any suggestions on what we kind of need on our plate to sustain ourselves?
I would say for that kind of role, like a waitressing role or a bar staff role, where any hospitality role really, where you're on your feet all day, you want to be eating consistently. So it's probably not going to look like 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but it might be, every 2 to 3 hours, I eat something that's got a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbohydrates in vegetable form, and a little bit of fat. And then I just reflect and see how that makes me feel. Okay, that was good. Although I did get hungry again in half an hour. So I probably need a little bit more protein, or a little bit more just food in general, higher quantity of food. And so, everybody is going to be so different in how it reacts. Some people really thrive off eating a vegan diet, and some people feel really unwell eating a vegan diet. And there's so many different variables to consider, that you could do all the research in the world and you still couldn't find that perfect diet for everyone. It's actually unique to you, what's going to work for you. I think that's what I spend, every day with clients, just reminding them that actually there's no perfect recipe out there that's going to work for everybody. So just focus back on what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah. Now, a couple of myths, we hear this sort of, you shouldn't eat after 6 p.m. Why is that? Why do people feel it's kind of taboo to eat these sort of meals at night? And I mean, if we're working into the evening, we're going to be closing up and coming home around 12 or 1 o'clock, or, if we're in the bar scene, maybe even later. Like you said, that continual eating, should we just be doing that until when? When is the time to stop eating?
Yeah. Well, I would say that myth is probably based on people who work a normal work day, or probably even school hours for that. You're more active up until about 3 o'clock in the day, and then you start to wind down from there. And so, you know, if you want to work with your metabolism in terms of actually utilize all of the energy of the food that you eat, then you want to be eating most when you're active, because your body's going to be burning that fuel and utilizing it, right? It's not storing any of it for later. So I think that myth is based on, you know, don't eat right before you go to bed a huge meal, because what's going to happen is it's going to put pressure on all of your organs as you're in a rest state. And you're going to wake up feeling sluggish and not great, and potentially be storing more of that food as fat, like I was explaining before, you know. So I guess there's some truth to that myth, but it's not 6 p.m. It's actually, you know, not eating a huge meal right before bed. But again, like I've got some clients who that really works for them, and some clients who, you know, can't handle any food before 10 a.m. and some clients who wake up at 5 and they're starving. And, you know, it's just like anything, you know, there's a rule out there for anyone, and you just have to decide if it works for you. I think it's going to change throughout your life. You know, when I'm working in a nightclub, I'm going to have a very different structure to my day than if I'm working as a receptionist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining now, like I've got this busy shift, and I'm going to start to maybe try and see what works for me. And if I've got this busy period, to try maybe and sort of snack throughout that period, what is something that I can have that gives me energy? Like I've heard the whole, you know, substitute your coffee with an apple, like that's going to give you instant energy. Do you have any other tricks up your sleeve in terms of what gives us a nice little boost?
Yeah, I would say an apple's going to give you like about 15 minutes of energy, you know,
Okay, so not as long as the coffee.
fresh apple feels really good. But it's not a long lasting source, because you got, you know, lots of carbohydrates, lots of good vitamins and minerals in there, but not a lot of substance. So if you had an apple with some peanut butter or something, you'd probably be doing a little bit better. Your energy is going to last a little bit longer. Or, you know, I don't know, I guess I'm just thinking, I've got a client at the moment who's a physio. So she's like in session all the time with 2-minute breaks, and she's not eating very much. And we're just talking about things that she could eat that aren't going to like smell or anything in between session. So we're like experimenting with things like boiled eggs, or we talked about apple with almond butter or something like that she can just have already kind of sliced and ready to go, that she can just shove in her mouth in between clients, or even like, protein balls or a protein shake or any of those things, like just trying to figure out what works for you in that environment.
Definitely some preparation, really, if we want to eat well, depending on, you know, like you said, let's experiment to see what works and what feels good within our bodies, but clearly preparation is a key.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like meal prep. Like,
I'm stressed. Like I don't have enough Tupperware. Like how many meals on a Monday am I supposed to cook? Like,
yeah. Oh my God. I've never been a meal prepper. And so I never recommend that, because it does my head in. And I always feel like, oh, I've made bolognese, but I don't feel like eating bolognese now. So
yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. So then I end up wasting a whole bunch of food. So I think in terms of, instead of preparation, I would call it like consideration. Like, okay, today I've got a 12-hour shift. I'm going to be on my feet most of the day. I'm going to have access to the food in the restaurant, but like the last few weeks I've been feeling a bit sluggish. I'm going to try, like, I don't know, just my in-between meals. I'm going to have something fresh that I've bought from home. And whether that is just like an avocado on a rice cake, or like something really just keep it simple, a couple of ingredients, toast or a sandwich or any of those things. Like, we overcomplicate nutrition so much by making it all about like green smoothies with 50 ingredients. And I can't remember, but I've seen something recently about Jennifer Aniston has this like salad that she swears by, and everyone has been sharing it on my Instagram feed. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's got like 30 ingredients in it. I'm like, who has time for that?
And maybe, you know, did Jennifer Aniston swears by her professional cook salad that
Yeah,
is prepared for her.
exactly.
Like, I personally would love to swear by that as well, but unfortunately, you know, my pay grade doesn't allow for a personal chef. So, right. So yeah, keeping it simple, like you said. But I mean, Kerryn, we've worked together before in the past, like looking at nutrition and mindfulness and the connection between those aspects. And something that you brought up that really resonated with me was vitamin P, this aspect of getting pleasure from our food. Can you talk on that for us?
Yeah. So like I said before, that if we really dial it back, like our reasons for eating are to survive, right? To give us energy to survive and potentially to thrive, right? So firstly, you're eating so that you can survive. In an ideal scenario, you're going to thrive. You're going to feel better than you did before. And part of the way that we achieve that is that we get pleasure out of what we eat, right? If we didn't enjoy eating, then we wouldn't survive. So there's a reason why pleasure chemicals are released every time we eat. But what tends to happen for most of us, and this applies to people not just in hospitality, is that we don't pay attention to eating when we're eating. So we don't get to experience that pleasure. And then it's often, you know, only the times like when we're on the couch at night, and that might be when you're eating something like chocolate or like one of your guilty pleasures. And that's when we really experience the pleasure. And it's not necessarily because you're eating chocolate, it's because you're sitting in your favorite chair, like really relaxed in that moment. And so then people start to associate, you know, extra pleasure with chocolate, but it's not necessarily that. Like, it's just that we're present in that moment, paying attention. And it really, like, you know, we can experience pleasure with anything that we eat because it's there. It's our biology. It's not something you can cheat.
That's really interesting. So it's like, if we were to slow down and become more mindful, we actually have this innate natural access to pleasure. So
Yeah.
I guess like that just got me thinking, if we're thinking about consumption, even when we're eating, we're actually consuming so much more than just our food.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's that environmental influence as well.
Yeah. And the thing is that when we don't allow ourselves to experience that pleasure, like often when we're not present when we eat, and you probably notice this, like if you ever eat in the car or if you eat at the movies or something, you can eat so much more and not even realize what the hell you ate. Like you're not even tasting it. It's afterwards when you get out of the car or you stand up from the movie that you're like, oh my God, I've eaten way too much of.
And we feel sick.
Yeah. And that's because your brain is like completely focused on something else. So you're focused on driving, or you're focused on watching the movie, whatever. And therefore the brain hasn't registered that you've had anything to eat. So you haven't had that rush of pleasure chemicals. Your body hasn't kicked in that you're even eating until the food's already in your stomach and kind of like fermenting in there. So it's not usually a good result. So the more present we can be with eating, not only do we get that pleasure release, but we're also like letting the body know, hey, right now I'm eating. Can you help me like thrive from this food? Can you help me digest it and assimilate it in the best possible way? There's heaps of research done into like just even having that thought, you know, I just want this food to be like healthy. I want to, you know, feel good after eating, can really have an impact on how food impacts us.
Is it true that when we actually slow down and we're mindfully eating and we release those pleasure chemicals, like you're saying, it actually assists with our digestion? Like we get more nutritional absorption from our food?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's something called cephalic phase digestive response, which is basically a fancy way of saying the nervous system component of digestion. So if we're eating in a rush, like if we're in the car or not paying attention, that phase of digestion doesn't kick in. And generally, where the body doesn't know that we've even eaten until food hits our stomach or even the next stage in our small intestine. So it's less likely to be absorbing the nutrition from that food. Where if the brain is like fully present, and you get this when you're cooking yourself, like, you know, you're chopping up the food, you're smelling the food, you're prepping yourself that whole time for eating. By the time you sit down, you're usually really ready to eat, right? So when we're in that environment, our body is able to like really be ready. So you might notice you get more saliva in your mouth. You might notice that your tummy starts rumbling. Same thing kind of happens when you order from a menu, because your brain's like, oh, I'm considering all the options. I'm picking scrambled eggs. Cool. Scrambled eggs are coming. And then you might notice when you're sitting there in the restaurant, you start to feel more and more hungry and a little bit distressed, because you're like, where's my eggs? Like, my body's ready for this. Right.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of the ideal situation, is where you've tuned in to like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I'm just going to focus on this. And it doesn't really matter after that initial point if you get distracted, because all of the organs involved in digestion are already doing their thing.
They're engaged. They know what's happening.
Yeah.
Which is, it's funny when you think about it, like in so many different environments in our life, we see these sort of, these, I don't know, like these funny moments, like these ironic moments where, you know, in hospitality, we're setting the scene for all the customers and patrons to be able to come in, and we want you to enjoy your meal and let us put the music on, and we create this scene, and then everybody else behind the scenes is like, oh, or not eating, or quickly rushing. And it's like, you know, so much of what we're about here at Healthy Mind Menu is not just looking at, okay, well, how do we create healthy environments, but how do we keep, you know, this industry focused on its own principles, which is like what we're delivering to others. How do we actually give back to ourselves? Like a service-based industry is like, let me give to you, which, you know, when we're in healthcare and you're a professional healthcare worker, we often do the same. It's like, well, I do counseling for my clients, or I practice meditation with my clients, and then I don't have any time for me. So there's this huge focus on actually, you know, going both ways as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true. Like I'm often coaching my clients to just take themselves on a date, like even if it's at home, and even if it's eating something that you don't think you're going to get a lot of pleasure out of, but just sitting down and like setting the table, or getting your favorite plate or bowl or whatever, and like setting the scene to eat, and just noticing like what happens, what changes if I eat with this much intention and eat slowly and kind of savor every mouthful. And what do I notice in my body? Like, how much do I actually want to eat in this moment? You know, and even just practicing that, like I'm sure it's similar with meditation, you know, just practicing that once a week or once a month, and then noticing the difference when you eat in a different way. Like you can't help but experience that feedback and then make changes. And it's so much more useful than me telling you that eating slow makes you feel better. Like, okay, great, I don't have time for that.
Yeah. So is it fair to say then that if you were going to just eat for the sake of eating, and you're not even aware, and you're just gutsing it down or rushing, it's probably not even worth having that meal to a certain degree?
Yeah. Well, you want to be careful of what you're eating in those moments, right? So I guess like there's always going to be times, and I'm not a perfect eater in any way, shape or form, but you know, there are times where I'm like, oh shit, I'm not going to have time to like sit down and eat my lunch today. So what am I going to have for lunch that's going to be easy on my digestive system? Like I'm probably not going to eat a steak in that moment, because that is something that my digestion doesn't like, needs a lot of time to digest, and it often makes me feel a bit tired. So like I want to eat something that's already pre-digested, and what I mean by that is like something that's slow cooked, or like something that's soft, or you know, even that's a good time for a smoothie, or like a really simple sandwich or something along those lines.
You spoke before about color, and you know, it's funny because we've been told growing up culturally to not play with your food, and now we're actually recognizing that we should be playing with our food. Like we should be taking some time. And I guess this is the beautiful thing about, if you do have a passion for food, or you cook, bake, or you're a chef, you get to actually play with that food and design and create. So tell me, what is the benefit about having colorful food? Like, what does that mean?
Well, the more colorful your food is, generally, the more alive it is. So if you think about like a vegetable that you've just picked from the garden, it often looks a little bit different from the vegetables you see in the supermarket, right? They're like vibrant colors. And that vibrancy is usually a sign that there's a whole lot more alive antioxidants in there. And antioxidants are just a group of vitamins, basically, that help us fight off any of the nasty cells. So they're like the good guys, the superheroes. The more that we can eat those, generally, the better we feel, which is the same if you suddenly start drinking like an acai smoothie or like one of those kind of superfoods. They're really high in antioxidants. So people tend to feel really good quite quickly from having a high antioxidant diet. So the more colors you get, the more variety of different vitamins that you're getting as well. Like green vegetables have one kind and red vegetables have a different kind. So, the best way to make sure that you don't have any kind of digestive problems is to just be constantly eating a variety of food and just like exposing your body to that variety.
Now, I hate to be the person that goes there, but I guess in all good friendships, you're allowed to go there and talk about stools.
Yeah.
And obviously, our diet really reflects in us going to the toilet as well. And, in the same way that if we're hydrated, we should be going to go to the toilet regularly. So, I guess we're also looking in our diet, we're also looking for the consistency in our bowel movements as well, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure that this would be, I'm thinking about when I was in hospitality and I'm working like a 12-hour shift in a really busy environment. It's pretty unlikely that I'm going to go to the toilet in that 12-hour shift. It's when you relax, it's when you're at home. It's, and so, when I was working in those environments, my digestion was definitely not at its best. A lot of eating under pressure, a lot of eating random foods, trying new things. So I would say it would be a challenge for this group of people to really have the most healthy stools, but I think it would be a fun challenge to take on. The more vegetables you eat, the more fresh fiber that you're getting in your diet, the more regular you're going to be, the more relaxed you are as well. The more regular you're going to be, and regular is going to look different to every single person. I've got some people that go like once or twice a week, and some people that go 2 or 3 times a day, and they're both healthy people. Like, I think it's another thing that really varies based on a lot of different reasons. But
yeah, I mean, nobody wants to say it because maybe it's a bit like of an ick, but like at the end of the day, it's actually good to be able to be aware of how often we're going to the toilet and actually having a look to start to see, because obviously the food that we consume, when it goes in, it also comes out, and just being aware of like, if again, like you said, is it easy and is there flow, or actually am I struggling here and is there tension, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah. And that it's like a report card, like, a daily report card of like, how did I eat today? Was this going to work out for me?
Yeah, that's true. So just quickly, should we be sitting down when we eat? Does that matter?
Preferably, yes. But mostly it's a matter of being relaxed. So, because you can be sat down and kind of like hunched over and like stressed, and it's probably not that much better for you. Like, some people actually prefer to be standing up and they feel like they're in kind of alignment, I suppose, and they can relax more. I would say that in my experience of working in hospitality, like, it'd be a good idea to sit down at least before you eat. So like just winding yourself down for a second, whether that's sitting down, outside for a minute where you can take some fresh air, or even going to the bathroom and just being like, okay, checking out of work mode and checking into like relax mode for just as long as I possibly can, which sometimes might be like 20 seconds, right? But the more that you can kind of make that shift before you eat, I think the better you'll feel for it.
Okay. Now, one of the other things I guess I'm hearing often within the industry is like this sort of access to alcohol and, you know, the effects that it has on us, and not just alcohol, but also drugs, you know, in terms of wanting to stay up. And in particular, we're talking about nutrition, this kind of overconsumption and the binging aspect. So like by the time we get to binge, is that just basically telling us that we are starved of nutrition? Like why, like I know in hospitality in the past, like I'd get that gap and I'd go, and then I'd just come home and just go, I just want to smash this packet of whatever, the twisties.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yum. I think there's lots of different reasons why people binge, but in that situation, I would say it's the first time you've relaxed, and then your body, like you're getting that message between your body and your brain's like, hey Paisley, you haven't eaten in ages, like could you give me some fuel? And what tends to happen in those moments is we crave like really quick fuel. That's the body trying to look after us. Like, what can you eat that's going to give me fuel in a second? And unfortunately, we don't go for the green apple. We usually go for like, chips or toast, or like something that's really quick. I often want to eat cheese in those moments. If I haven't eaten enough, I'm just like, oh, just some cheese, that'll sort me out.
It's that moment where like you know, everybody has that moment when you come home as a child and there's a parent figure and you say you're hungry and they say there's lots of fruit and you're like, no, not that. I want the crap stuff, the yummy stuff.
Yeah. And that's a really good example, because I often talk to my clients about this. Like, do you remember when you were a kid and like, even if you had a full lunchbox, when you got home, you're just like, I want to eat. I'm so hungry. Like, it doesn't even matter if you just ate at school. It's just this thing that when you get home and you're relaxed, you're like, okay, I'm in my safe place. Like, this is a good time to eat. Like, if we started to view that as, oh, actually my body's trying to tell me something, or my body's trying to take care of me here, then it's a whole different experience to like, I'm out of control. As soon as I get home, I just want to eat. Like, that's such a different experience to what I just explained. Yeah.
What about the effects of alcohol in terms of our nutrition or ability to consume food?
Yeah, well, I don't know about you, but when I drink alcohol, I always need to like eat something salty at the same time.
Yeah, they're a good pairing, right?
Yeah. So there's that, I suppose, to consider. And also alcohol suppresses your like brain body connection. So you're not going to be thinking about your hunger signals or nutrition in the same way as you would if you were sober. So I guess like for hospitality workers who are drinking on a consistent basis, not all of them are, but for those that are, you know, that's going to have a lasting effect. You know, I'm not connected to my like hunger and satiety signals. I'm not noticing how this food makes me feel, because I'm not really noticing much. Like you know, alcohol is so great for just numbing us out from what's really going on. So I guess it's making that choice. Like sometimes that's okay. Every day, is that okay? Is it going to have the best possible outcome for you? Are you going to survive? Yes, probably. Are you going to thrive? Maybe not.
And I know in my experience of working with clients with addiction, you know, addiction is that disconnection. When the mind and body are separate, we can't get a read. We lose touch with our body's signals. And like you said, the body is so intelligent. If we tune in, it's actually doing the navigation for us. It's telling us we want this, we want that. And so when we create that separation, that's actually what tends to wake addiction up, that disconnection. Yep. So when we, you know, there's sometimes hospitality gets a rap for, you know, people are out of control with drugs or alcohol and addiction. But like you said, there's a lot of factors that if we're not being mindful to are separating that mind body.
Yeah.
And sort of waking that addiction up.
Yeah. And that's where, like, you know, it's a challenge that it's going to be more difficult to overcome in that environment. So like, what can you do? Well, one, you can try and just stop drinking, but is that really realistic and possible? Maybe not. So then it's like, okay, well, how can I build that connection in different ways to make sure that even though I'm drinking at the end of my shift every day, like I'm having these moments of connection with my body and checking in and doing the best that I can in the moments where I can. right? So even if it's on your days off, or if it's in the mornings, or, anything is better than nothing, right?
Absolutely. Now, I'm loving this conversation. I love the way that it's taken, and I'm feeling, what's the word that you said? Satiated?
Satiety?
Yeah. I'm feeling, is that satisfied?
You're good.
Okay, I'm loving that. So, I'm feeling that we're getting there. I know you have a couple of resources that you would like to share. So I think now would be a good time to share screen and just talk us through like what we've got here.
Yeah. So I created a couple for people to use however they want to. It doesn't have to be in the way that I share them. Here we go. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So the first one is based on taking a moment before you eat. So like I said before, it doesn't have to be a long moment. You don't need to do a meditation or anything like that. If we want to kick in that part of the brain that starts digestion off, then we just want to let the body know, hey, I'm switching from working into eating right now. And it doesn't take very long, like as long as reading a menu or as long as looking at your food. So this mindful moment, you might take a deep breath to start it and actually just notice like, okay, I'm switching from work mode to eat mode, whatever that looks like. And relaxing your body as much as possible. Obviously, there's going to be days where this is more of a challenge than others, or environments where this is more of a challenge than others. But even just like that deep breath, dropping your shoulders a little bit, putting your feet on the floor, right? And then in this mindful moment before you eat, I've got a list of questions here that you could consider. And different questions tend to work for different people. So pick one or pick a couple and focus on that. And then maybe, next week, focus on a different question and see what feedback you get. So the questions I've got here are, why am I eating right now? I just love this question. Like no one really considers it, but it's cool. Like, we eat all the time.
I really love health nerds. Like this is
Yeah.
great. Like, awesome.
Well, I think, there's so much detail out there about what to eat. What am I eating? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? How many calories is in it? There's all this research, but like, why am I eating? Like, if you think about even just breakfast this morning, why did you eat breakfast, Paisley?
Well, I didn't. Apparently, I had an apple that only lasts 15 minutes. It's probably why I'm getting a little bit like munchy craving now. But I'm learning.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next question I've got is, how does my body feel? So it's like just this opportunity to check in before I eat. How am I feeling? And like most of the time, you're probably going to respond with hungry. That's why I'm here, right? Feeling hungry. What does hungry even feel like? So if you're thinking about ways to connect with your body, like hunger is a really good one to explore, because we're all familiar with that. It's not, particularly if you're sitting down with a plate of food in front of you, it's not a scary feeling, right? But we can feel it in our body. It's like a feedback from the body saying, hey, I'm hungry. I'm ready for something now. So how does my body feel? It might be tired. I might be happy, it might be like energized, who knows? There's lots of different ways we can feel, of course.
It's funny, like you said, we're not afraid of when we feel hunger, but we are afraid when someone around us feels hunger. It's like, oh my God, feed this person. If you're working in hospitality and you see someone's hungry, it's like, oh my God, get this person fed, like they're about to rage. So there's definitely that link between when we don't get our needs met and we're hungry, can create anger.
Yeah, absolutely. Hangry.
Hungry, exactly.
Yeah, my blood sugar definitely controls my mood, so I can relate. So what does my body need? So like this could be like a shallow question, or it could be a really deep question. What does my body need? Well, actually, I only had an apple for breakfast, so I'm feeling like I need something more substantial than an apple. So I'm going to eat like maybe, a thick piece of bread instead of just a cracker, right? So we're just thinking about that from a nutrition perspective. And then how long before I'll eat again, right? Am I going to eat again in half an hour? Okay, probably don't need as much as if actually I've got 5 hours, like it's dinner time at this restaurant. I'm probably not going to eat again until we wrap up. So I'm going to need this food to sustain me. Like, is this apple going to work? Probably not, right? I'm going to need to get something more here. Will this food make me feel more alive? I love this question. Like, or will this food make me feel more dead, like more tired or more vibrant? I think, yeah, like that is the purpose of food, right? To make us feel more alive, to make us feel more energized. So if it's not doing that, there's something not quite right. Do I enjoy this food? We want to get the pleasure that we seek, right? So do I enjoy this food? Okay, I'm going to actually really enjoy it. Like, you know, there are some meals that you eat with like full presence and like every mouthful is amazing, especially if you're on holidays and somebody else has cooked it for you. You're just like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever eaten, right? But
like
then
like those moments where you order tapas and there's 10 people and you know there's not enough. And
yeah,
like everybody takes like the smallest little knife and fork cut of an arancini ball and like you just enjoy it so much. That to me, that's getting pleasure from food. It's really slowing it down for all of us.
yes. yeah, I agree. And then how much do I need? So it's similar to what does my body need? But it's like, okay, how much food, how much of this food do I need? Like, do I need to eat that whole plate? Or actually, if I eat that whole plate, am I going to feel more alive or more dead? What's going to work for me? So that's resource number 1.
I mean, sometimes even with that food, you know, there's that level of, well, I've cooked all this food now. I feel obligated to finish the meal. I don't want to waste it. You know, it feels wrong to just throw this out. But actually, I guess it's like, well, I'm not the garbage can, or am I? Like, do I have to eat all this because I should, because it's bad for the environment if I'm a waster? So sometimes that comes to mind as well.
Yeah, and it's a belief that I work with clients on all the time. When I did this eating disorder training a couple of years ago, one of the challenges that they set for us was at lunchtime to go and buy something to eat and then throw it in the bin. And I had such a like physical reaction to it. And the whole lunch break, I was like, I'm going to give it to a homeless person. I'm going to like buy something I don't like. Like all of these different kind of beliefs were coming up for me. It was a real challenge to just buy something and then waste it straight away. And we talked about it for ages afterwards. But I think, you know, a lot of us have had that. You know, there's starving kids in Africa. What are you doing wasting food or not even eating everything on your plate? And I get why parents you know, have taught us that, like, we don't want to be wasteful. And I definitely wouldn't encourage you to just go and buy something and throw in the bin. But like, I also think that it can be a limiting belief in a way, you know, like actually it's okay to stop eating when you feel full. It's okay. I'm not enjoying this. I don't want to eat anymore. It's okay to be your own, I guess boss when it comes to like what you eat and how much of it you eat. And that rule, while it has good intentions, has kind of created that lack of trust
Yeah, definitely. And no, even being in hospitality, seeing plates come back with all these chips. And I just remember thinking like, oh, like these wasters, like these people, like not even eating the meat, you know? So yeah, it's definitely one to think about.
Yeah. And that kind of fits actually quite perfectly into the second resource. Hang on, let me get it open. So this one is more for after you eat. So I think the best time to check in is like an hour after you eat. You can obviously do it at any point. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be like, I ate at 10:20, I'm going to check in at 11:20. It could be like 10 minutes after you eat. It could be 2 hours after you eat. But really it's just like almost the same check-in, the same kind of questions. You just want to look for feedback. Like every time we eat, we have this opportunity to kind of check in with our body, to maybe take a moment to relax, and then to experience what it's like to receive feedback from the body. So you might feel hungry before you eat and then full afterwards. Like that's an example of feedback. But ideally, like meals, like I said, are meant to make us feel better, make us feel more alive. We should feel satisfied. We should feel energized. We should be better able to think, better able to handle stress than we were before, and clear in the mind. And if we don't, then something's not quite right with what we ate, right? And it could be not related to that meal that you just had. It could be like every meal that you've had for the last week, or all of the stress that's built up, or the lack of sleep, or whatever. It might not just be that one meal you ate, but that one meal you ate is probably an easier opportunity for change than the whole backlog of shit, right? So if we just simplify it to this eating experience, then it's actually somewhere where we can quite easily enact change and notice the difference. And then the more that we do that on a regular basis, the more that we enact that change, then the better we feel, and then the better able we are to handle all of the other shit, right? So it's this kind of really good opportunity of self-care. So if you're not feeling like that, if you're at this angry end of the barometer, the little red angry guy there, or even the orange guy, then you want to think about, like, what could I change? And some of the things I've written there, maybe it's eating a bit less, or maybe it's eating a bit more. Maybe it's eating something completely different. Like, actually, that apple didn't work for me. Next time I'm going to have a pear, or whatever. Or next time I'm going to have 2 apples, right? Maybe it's that you weren't really present with what you were eating, like we were talking about. So you just need to actually slow it down a little bit. Like, okay, I actually felt hungry again immediately after eating, but I ate a steak and vegetables. Like, I couldn't possibly be biologically hungry. So maybe it's because I wasn't really present while I was eating. I didn't get that brain to body connection. So my body still thinks I need to eat again. So maybe I just need to eat a bit slower. Or maybe it's my environment. I kind of mentioned it before. If we're sitting at work when we eat, our brain and our body is kind of in that work mode, beast mode, or whatever people call it. You're like, think, action. Yeah. And that's not really the environment we want to be in. Like, the ideal eating environment is somewhere that's calm and chill, and whatever the opposite of beast mode is, right? So I know that it's not always possible when you're at work to leave completely, but like I said, just taking that breather, whether it's going into a different room, or going to the bathroom, or stepping outside for a minute, or wherever it is, that's your kind of like more peaceful place before you eat, can really make a big difference to the impact your food has.
Yeah.
Cool.
I love that. Thanks so much. Like, I mean, holistic nutritionist. I like the word holistic because, to me anyway, what that feels like is that I don't have to have a diary or count calories or go to become some sort of meal prepping person that I've never been in my life. It also doesn't mean I have to have Excel spreadsheets. Like, it's just this kind of tool that says we already have what we need.
Yeah.
And it's just about, coming back in to recognize a few of those indicators. Like, we're smarter than we seem. Our bodies are really intelligent if we get out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Like, there are so many complicated nutrition plans out there. You don't need them, right? You can create your own kind of plan and navigate your way through what feels good by just taking these moments to check in and notice the impact. Like you were saying before about drinking every day, and that, like, when I think back to my hospitality experiences, like, I didn't notice how bad it was making me feel until I stopped doing it, and started doing something different and started to feel good, like getting sleep on the weekend. And, like, I noticed the difference between going and having a healthy breakfast and then like laying in the sun and not having to like just be sleeping all day and working all night. And once I noticed that, like, truly felt it in my cells, it was really challenging to go back. Like, a few times now, I've got a lot of friends in events. I've been asked to work at events and stuff, and I'll do it for a weekend. And I'm just like, oh my God, it feels so horrible. I don't know how people do this all the time, right? it's like once you've had that feedback, whether it's small or large, it's a challenge to go back, right? So how do we make the best with the situation that we're in, with our work environments or, you know, home environments? You know, we can't always control the variables, but we can actually control the small things. And what you eat is like a really basic kind of place to start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're definitely, you know, like in all areas of our life, there's this sort of safety net that you get to when you've been maintaining good health and you find that balance point. You can allow yourself to kind of go up a bit or down a bit, but you sort of come back to center, as opposed to, you know, when you're in a really unhealthy space, it's like you have to put in a bit of effort for a little while to get back to that calibration, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be as dramatic as like I don't know, Instagram nutritionists of the world will tell you. Like, you don't have to eat, you know, a healthy meal every single meal, you know, to be healthy. I
don't have to make a smoothie bowl in the morning. Like,
no.
Oh, thank God.
I know. And you don't have to meal prep like every other meal and have like, you know, weighing out your protein and all of those things. Like, those things can all be helpful depending on what your goal is, but they can also be really harmful. So again, it's like picking the experience that you can handle and that makes you feel good. And, you know, to me, like I said, meal prepping, counting calories, all those things, they never made me feel good. I didn't learn a lot from those experiences. Apart from that, I don't like planning my meals in advance. But I didn't learn a lot from counting calories either. Just like, it was boring. Where like focusing on what food makes me feel good, I enjoy that. That works for me, you know. And actually I learned a lot from that and unlearned a lot from that as well.
So true. Such a beautiful note to, I think, wrap up what was a really fun conversation around food and nutrition as well, and how that affects us physically, mentally, emotionally. And we know that you can't separate all these factors.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Kerryn. If somebody would like to follow a little bit more about your philosophy and some of the way that, you know, your approach to food, how can they contact or find you?
Yeah, probably the easiest spot is on Instagram, Kerryn Grace on Instagram, or on my website, which is just simply kerryngrace.com.
Super simple. I like it. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to collaborating again in the future.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Okay, guys, thanks for joining in. The next topic will be next month, which is November. Can't believe we're approaching Christmas so soon and summer season. And it will be looking at sleep, which again, sleep affects so many parts of us. It probably affects the way that we also digest as well, which I'm sure is true. Until then, if you have any questions, you can contact us directly. Thank you, Angela. You can contact us at coordinator@healthymindmenu.org.au or go straight to our website, healthymindmenu.au. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks.